All right, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today and letting us into your head. I hope we don't do any damage. We're just a bunch of Kiss fans and we talk Kiss. So come along for the ride. You've got nothing to lose. Welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. I'm your host, Julian Gill. I am solo today, but I've got a very special guest, the one, the only, the Joey-licious, Joey Cassata, member of the number one podcast in the world, Podcast Rock City, author of numerous literary works. And he's a drummer.
How are
Joey.
you, my friend? It is a pleasure to be here. What an introduction. I love you using the number one the proper way. I appreciate that.
Hey, you got to give respect. You're an East Coast guy. You know about respect. So it's been a little while since I saw you in New York City. And, for people who didn't catch Podcast Rock City and your recap of Peter Criss at the Cutting Room, I was on one side of the stage in the audience. You were on the other side of the stage as a performer participating in several very cool songs. I'd like to just give everyone a quick recap of what went down that night for you, because you hit a milestone, didn't you, that night?
Yeah, I mean, what an honor it was to be. First of all, this was the Peter was honored at the Raven Drum Foundation with an award, and he humbly, of course, accepted the award, came down, played a couple songs. I was floored when I was asked to not only perform that night, but I got to perform with Peter doing the closing number, a little help from my friends, Peter on vocals, me on drums. It was, a dream come true, life-changing moment. It's that full circle moment. This all started for me back in 1979 when I saw Kiss for the very first time in Madison Square Garden. I saw Peter go up on that drum riser. I knew that was all I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And, fast forward, 45 years later, or whatever it was, 46 years later at this point, when I get to play with Peter on stage, I'm sitting there playing the drums, and it's so surreal. I'm like floating, and I'm in the audience. I'm on the stage. It's like so weird that I'm sitting there just with a big, you saw me, Julian, big goofy grin on my face, Peter in front of me singing, just, what an amazing experience.
I was impressed. You kept focus on your job rather than just watching Peter, because, to be on that throne behind, Peter Criss, who was up front singing for that song, that just must have been absolutely incredible. And doing it in New York City in a little club, great. It was a great night. It was super fun.
It was, listen, I'm so happy that I got through it. It was a great performance. Peter sounded great. He was acting great, friendlier than ever. Peter as well as anyone else, Julian. He's a sweetheart. And he was just on the top of his game that night. He played drums that night. He sang a couple songs. So to do that last song, I was just so, it was so funny. Like, I was so sad that it was over and happy that it was over at the same time. No big mistakes. We got through it, and I fulfilled the childhood dream.
Yeah, so this week is the 46th anniversary of those shows at Madison Square Garden. Do you remember which one you went to?
I think it's, I have the poster. I think I went to the second night, the 25th, right?
Yeah, I write it down. I can't remember which one is which, especially for all those dates that were kind of tentatively booked and whatnot. So, yeah, the details don't matter, but what a great time it would have been to become a fan. And you've carried that through, you became a drummer. You've been with ZO2, most notably for me anyway, because I saw you in 2004 when you're opening for Kiss and Poison on the, the Rock of the Nation tour. And then I saw you back in Tahoe. You came back, I think that was 2008, maybe.
8 or 9. Yeah, 8 or 9. Yeah.
Yeah. It all gets a bit vague after all these years. And you've branched out into other media over the years. And what we're here to talk about today primarily is, of course, it's not new now because I'm so late to the game getting you on this show after all the delays I've had in my personal life. But you've put out The Order of the Rose, which is it fair to call it fantasy, fan fiction, since it does have elements that are based in the realm, no pun intended, of Kiss history?
I consider it, it's a what if story. What if the Elder was fleshed out and, it's inspired by The Elder. It's a what if story. If The Elder ever went that next step and became a movie, became a screenplay, became a novel, what could it have been? And that's really, what I did. I was inspired by that album so much, and I'm sure we'll get into it. I got the pleasure of performing the whole Elder record with some incredible musicians, Zach Throne and Todd Kearns and Jeremy Asbrock and Tyson Leslie. We did it at Kiss Cancer Goodbye in December. And, I was always a big fan of the record. It was actually the very first record I ever bought with my own money. So I was always a very big fan of The Elder, but I never dove into it as deeply as I did trying to learn the record for that performance. And when I did, I would, the creative juices, you're the same way, Julian. You got 1,000 books out. The creative juices just started flowing, and I was dying to know more about this story. And I did some research, and I tried to find the script and blah, blah, blah. And I just assumed that this was never going to happen. So I said, you know what? Let me just do it myself.
Yeah, and you know what? Kudos to you for making more sense of the kind of a story based on The Elder than the album did, because the book actually makes sense from start to finish. You've done creative writing previously, haven't you? What is it? Chicken Monkeys was, I think, your first publication. Is that creative? I haven't bought it, so I know you have 3 books on it.
Yep. So I have a full comic book series out as well. It's called The Chicken Monkeys. It's a cross between Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Lord of the Rings, and Star Wars. It's a fantasy world. That's my first real dive into the fantasy realm and fiction and so on and so forth. And then, I had a book series, Wrestling with Joey Licious, that came out as well. That's based in my real life, but it's very heavily fictitious. So, I've been doing some creative writing over the years, and I figured, not that it was going to be an easy task, of course, because it's The Elder, it's, this crazy story, but it was the easiest thing, believe it or not, I wrote over the years, because I had the template. The template is there. And, I didn't utilize every single thing from the story, and I didn't utilize all this stuff. And, I made it, it's a story just inspired by The Elder. Anyone could read this story. Anyone could hopefully like this story. It's not a Kiss story per se, but I know you read it. There's 1,000 Kiss Easter eggs. If you are a Kiss fan and you are an Elder fan, you will understand all the little references inside the book. And if you're not, it's just an original fantasy novel. So I think it works kind of both ways. But because I had the blueprint of the album, in the original order, the way we did it at Kiss Cancer Goodbye, with the way the story flows, it kind of gave me an easy template guideline that I could at least keep myself in a box. So, I have a tendency, just like a lot of writers, I could easily write 1,000 pages and then have to edit it down and then figure out what do I do? What do I take out? What storyline is irrelevant? What character is irrelevant? But with this, I kind of had the basis of what I wanted, and because the songs were there. So once the songs were there, and I kind of utilized them to tell the story. So it was a great template to start with.
I like how you have incorporated the mythology of Kiss broadly into it as well. I do want to take you to task. I have burns on my nose from the amount of times I snorted coffee out while reading this book. There would just be some characters' quirks or some setup that you can't help but not laugh. And I'm sitting on the bus most mornings reading this, and people are looking at me like I'm the special kid on that bus. Like, what is wrong with that fat guy with the book? It's like, are you okay? Do we need to stop by the mental ward for you? But I find it so creative. It must have been very liberating in the sense that the Elder story makes no sense whatsoever. You do have your basic plot elements of a boy, a quest, a bad guy, and then you get to fill in the blanks around that. I mean, how many of those kind of Easter eggs, shall we say, came naturally and subconsciously, and how many were intentional?
Well, it's funny. You're so right. The story of The Elder is the most generic story in history. It's every fantasy story. It's Lord of the Rings, it's Star Wars, it's even the Bible, it's Jesus, it's that hero on a quest to fulfill the prophecy and to defeat the ultimate evil. It's the same old story throughout movie history, book history, religious history, and it works. It's obviously a tried and true story that works. That's the template, and that's really basically what The Elder is. There's not much, more meat on the bones. So I had to dive in and say, okay, what am I going to do to fill in all of these blanks? And honestly, when I started, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And it's kind of just my writing process. And Julian, I'm sure you have your writing process as well. I write and things just flow through me. And once they stop flowing, I stop writing. I could write for 10 hours straight one night, and I could write for 6 minutes one night and can be done. It's just how it works. So all the Kiss Easter eggs, once I started to tell the story, the main character's name is Kaleon. And I knew I wanted something with a K for Kiss. I wanted something, his nickname through the book, all the other characters, short for Kaleon is K. I wanted that to kind of centralize. And once I did that, then I started utilizing some other stuff like Creatures of the Night and utilizing some, lore in future records where I was pulling stuff from where, I could use a little bit of that from this record and maybe this from this song title. And then I knew I wanted to incorporate the Kiss history and Kiss lore into this book somehow. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I didn't want to use any names. I didn't want to plagiarize. I didn't want to do anything like that. So throughout the book, starting with, what I call the avatars, which are, in essence, the characters from Kiss, I started utilizing, different names, calling them different types of things like Gene instead of Gene. He's Genius, and Peteora is Peter, and so on and so forth. So I utilized, different character names to come up with the characters from the story. But I knew I wanted the main characters to focus around this boy K, of course, the boy from the story Elder. And I knew I wanted Ferric, the fox, to be a main character in this story because obviously everyone who knows me, I'm a tremendous Eric Carr fan. And I think he just, over the years in history, has been, the Kiss fans love him more than ever. But I think in the world of history and the lore of Kiss, he's getting forgotten, and I don't want that. So I knew I wanted to make him a main character, and what better main character than the main girl being Bethara, and of course, Beth for short.
Yeah, so that whole introduction of Bethara was one of those coffee snorting moments because that was just so deadpan, so cold. So it was a really nice contrast, really, because, again, it got into more character dynamics, which is what surprised me that you really managed to do a good job of with some of these characters in particular. Obviously Vincentius and Bethara being the two standout characters to me in terms of them both really hitting the mark in terms of how they start and how they develop at the end. So, well done to you for doing, such good work. And I loved Ferric. It's impossible not to, because I think you captured an essence of Eric's personality, or how we as fans perceive his personality to have been, like super nice and accommodating, helpful and outgoing, but a little bit doubting and shy. You really managed to nail all those personality traits. Did you write down kind of your personality traits for each of these characters to kind of keep yourself aligned as you're working your way through it?
Believe it or not, not really. So again, the process all started, like I said, when I started really diving deep into learning The Elder. Again, with like a different side of my brain. I always loved The Elder with my fan side of my brain. But then when my drumming musicality side of the brain started learning it, it was just a totally different experience. And it all started with me just jotting down a basic premise of the story. Obviously, it's the story of The Elder. I knew I wanted to use some of these main characters with some of the names that I just told you about. And I knew I wanted to somehow capture, if I could, the personalities of each KISS member. And I think, they're so distinct. They're so different. Every one of the KISS characters over the years, Eric and Peter and Gene and Paul and Ace and Vinny, and you might see a little Mark St. John and Bruce Kulick, and maybe you'll see a little Bob Kulick in there, and so on and so forth. Every one of them have such distinct personalities. I wanted to somehow capture the feeling of those characters inside of my characters. And by doing so, it was better for me to do that because, again, I'm a big fantasy book reader. Robert Jordan and Terry Goodkind and David Eddings and all these, and Tolkien, of course. The biggest part about fantasy books that to me sometimes turn away the average reader is sometimes the over descriptiveness of the world, of the characters. You might have a chapter of, the main four characters walking through the woods, and they're describing every tree branch and the smell and the aromas and the hair on each person's arm. It's too much sometimes. So I consciously went into this book knowing that if I could tap that KISS fan who already kind of knows what these characters are, and then just slowly tell you through storytelling rather than descriptiveness what these characters' traits are, it would not only save a lot of time and pages, but I thought it would keep the people's attention who maybe aren't the average fantasy reader.
Right. Were you afraid some of these character traits do strike a little bit close to home? And I was like, oh my God, he went there. Auras and Hilson black holes, for instance.
Oh, you got that. Not many people got that one.
And logs and fires. Shame on you for that one, by the way. Shame on you. Was there anything, when you're coming up with those kind of traits, you're like, should I? Shouldn't I? Oh my God, I'm going to get a text.
Well, honestly, the main thing I wanted to do was really not plagiarize, right? I didn't want to use people's names. I didn't want to use, the word KISS is not mentioned in the book. Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, Peter Criss, Eric Carr, Ace Frehley, none of them are mentioned in the book at all.
Yeah.
All the names I used are all my character names. Names like the Elder and Morpheus and stuff like that. That's not a copywritten type name. Morpheus is in The Matrix, and it's a generic name. It's a generic fantasy type name. So what I wanted to do is not utilize anything that could cause any plagiarism, of course, and kind of come back to me. But I did want to tell the truth about some of what I thought these characters' traits were. Whether they're real or not, that's up to you to decide. I'm not going to tell you they're this person or that person. If you want to make the connection with the Hilson black hole, occupying Stan Lee's time over the years and kind of consuming him, you can come to your own conclusions. I don't know what you mean by that, but I wanted to make sure that I captured these guys' characters to a point where everyone can relate. And you tell me, Julian, I hope that I did a good job, that they kind of are all unique, which they are in real life, of course, if you're kind of utilizing those characters to play off my characters. And they're all everyone's in a good light. It's a lighthearted story. I don't badmouth anyone or crap on anyone. I try to make everyone eventually come out to be the hero. And the avatars, to me, they're not even based on KISS. They're more based on, like, I think of the story that I told is more, it's always so religious based. It's the elders are more like God, and the avatars were the angels that God created first, and then cast the avatars aside to create man. And that's kind of the story I told, and I just utilized the KISS world.
Yeah, and again, finding your way and becoming a hero is it's a timeless story that doesn't always involve a battle outside. It's a battle within. So
Right.
Again, that's a universal theme to human condition of learning, accepting, believing, and whatnot, which again, it makes it more than just a superficial throwaway story. Because again, so many stories that are based on those traditional elements, go a long way into paralleling aspects of our lives. So you end up being able to see a person in a character or a part of yourself in a scene, and it makes it very entertaining. I mean, that's no excuse for making people snort the coffee through their noses, but there we are. I guess that's my fault.
And just to recap what Julian said, this is not a comedy book, Julian. Julian was just very pleasantly, I guess, surprised at some of the references that I made, and I'm assuming that they were amusing to you. I love that you got some of them. Maybe you missed some too.
I'm not snorting in humor. I'm snorting in that I'm recognizing something in one of those situations from my reading of, the Elder story. Now, you were talking about the Kiss Cancer Goodbye event. I want to just ask you about that because I was watching that this afternoon anyway. That was my preparation for this. Was just enjoying that again. How do you, as a drummer, learn to do the Elder in a performance? Are you doing charts, or are you just, flailing away until you find a feel, a vibe? How do you work as a drummer for that sort of performance? Because that's quite an album to try and do.
So everything that I approach is always different. It depends on the material, right? So the same weekend we did Creatures of the Night as well, as you know. We did the full Creatures of the Night show. So, the way I tackled Creatures was completely different than tackling the Elder. They were just two absolutely different monsters on different ends of the spectrum. Creatures was putting my headphones on and pounding through the set, learning every nuance that Eric did, like running a car 200 miles an hour into a wall. That's how I approach Creatures. With the Elder, I just couldn't do that. I tried it at first. It just didn't work. It was way too cerebral. It's very theatrical. It's very theater based. It's I did Broadway for years, so I do have that theater background, and that's kind of how I approached it. Whenever I did any Broadway work, I always got the book. I always got my charts, so it was very easy. I would just sit, look at my charts, read the charts, learn them, sight read them, play the book. With this, there's no charts. There's no charts to look up. There's nothing to look up. And even the recordings themselves, whether it was Bob Ezrin in the editing room, a lot of it's very chopped up, what I found. And what I mean by that, as a drummer and a musician, there are measures throughout the Elder where I don't think it's a natural transition, that I think it's chopped up in the studio, that Bob made this call and maybe removed a piece, moved the piece up, moved the piece back, and this became the verse. So it was hard because it wasn't a natural feel, a lot of this stuff like Under the Rose and Mr. Blackwell and Only You, where things were starting on a 2 or a 3 or a measure of 5 or a measure of 7 for no good reason. I just think Bob was in the editing room and maybe a little, drugged up and making these crazy choices, which turned out to be masterful. I love the Elder, but to sit down and learn it, it's not something I just wanted to sit and memorize. So I did chart a couple little things out. And what I mean by chart out, I'm not physically charting full notation for every drum part, for every measure, for every song. What I'm doing is I'm doing song maps. I'm just writing basic song maps. Here's a verse. Here's what Eric's playing in the verse. Here's the bar lines. Here's how many times that bar might go, blah, blah, blah. Just little cheat sheets. That way I have them as I'm rehearsing that I can look upon to kind of make sure that I'm getting the parts correctly without just having to memorize and guess.
What was your favorite song from the Elder to perform as a drummer?
I mean, definitely going into it, Escape from the Island was what I was looking forward to the most. Since I'm a little, like I said, I bought this record when I was 7 years old. It was the first record I ever bought when it came out. And me and my friends who weren't musicians yet, and I kind of was just a musician, just starting to play drums, we always said to ourselves, we want to play this song one day. We're going to play this song. We're going to play this song. It never happened. And I had never played it over the years. And it was the one song that I really was looking forward to the most playing. But because over the years, I really, I studied that song because it's such a big Eric Carr drum type song. That one was a little easier because it is a little bit more straightforward. I knew it in my brain. I could hum every Eric Carr fill. I could hum it like a song, like a guitar solo. Eric's fills in that song are so musical that I can hum them so I could recreate them. Not pretty easy, but easily enough that I didn't have to go crazy learning. Something like Only You or Mr. Blackwell was a real nightmare. Mr. Blackwell, there's so many little things in Mr. Blackwell. Rests where you're coming in on a weird spot, and then the same rest the next time is a different entrance, and then again the same time the next time is again it's different. So stuff like that was really difficult. But the things I enjoyed the most, it's funny, like I always loved that second half of The Elder with I and the heaviest songs and, Mr. Blackwell and Escape from the Island. But for this performance, I really loved doing Odyssey, Just a Boy, Under the Rose, all of that stuff, Only You. Those first 4 songs were my favorite to do.
Oh, hey, you're still here, watching or listening. Why don't you hit that subscribe button or click the like one? And if you want even more, click on the join button on YouTube. Thanks for your support. Yeah, if I recall, wasn't it like 4 songs were done before Todd even said a word to the audience? I mean, yeah. You guys just came straight in and banged through essentially the first side of the album before speaking. And wow. I mean, watching it again today, that's like the 3rd time now I've sat through it. It's like, I'm surprised by how well it came off, to be perfectly honest. Very surprised.
Oh, I'll tell you, we are too. So we got together, that I think we performed it on Saturday afternoon. We got together Thursday night to perform it for the very first time, to rehearse it. We had 1.5 rehearsals. We did it Thursday night, but we didn't have everyone there Thursday. So we ran what we could. But something like this, it's all about homework. All those guys I did this record with, they're such pros. They came in, not only had every part locked in, every harmony, every little spot that they thought could have been what the guy was playing. They knew 3 versions of it just in case it wasn't the right version. So they were just as big a Kiss fans as I am. We did our homework. We started working on it months prior. I remember when we first got the text from Neil Davis to do this and we were asked to do it, obviously we all jumped at the chance, because when the hell are you ever going to do The Elder in its entirety? So we jumped at the chance, and I think the show was in the beginning of December, and we started our group thread right at the beginning of October. And none of us are thinking that we're really diving into this record yet, but sure enough, like a week into our thread, I forget who it was first. Maybe it was Jeremy or Todd. It was like, hey, I know I'm crazy, but I just started diving into this already. And then all of a sudden, Zach chimed in. It was like, hey, yeah, I did too. I felt a little weird saying that I already dove into it. And then sure enough, I said the same thing. So, we were back and forth on our group thread, hundreds and hundreds of texts. Hey, what do you hear in this part? How many bars are you hearing this? What's the harmony in this part? What are you thinking here? So we worked out a lot of it, weirdly enough, in our group thread. And then, we got our arrangements down. We figured out some endings that we were going to attempt. And then by the time we got together that Thursday night, we were about 85% there as soon as we tried it. And I know those those last 15% are the hardest 15% to get locked in. But by the end of that, that other half rehearsal we had in sound check, we were pretty confident that we could do it. The only question was there going to be a train wreck or not? And knock on wood, nothing that I heard.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sitting up on that throne and watching the reaction, did you get the SpongeBobs in the audience that you should have gotten for doing The Elder live?
It's funny. We didn't know what was it going to be. Obviously, The Elder's not, we did Creatures the night before. The audience is going crazy. Everyone's on their feet. It's high energy. We ended the night with Creatures of the Night and 2 encores from Lick It Up. It was high energy, high octane chaos. The next day, we start in the afternoon with fanfare and Just a Boy. So it's a very different vibe, and the audience took a little while. I mean, I think they were almost just like, what is happening? I can't believe I'm sitting listening to The Elder for the first few songs. And then I think it took, by the time Dark Light hit, then they were like fully invested, like, holy cow, now we get it. So it was a little bit of both. It was very calm in the beginning, which it should be, right? It's a very easy intro to those first few songs. And then by the time Dark Light hit, and then The Oath, of course, and then, World Without Heroes and all that stuff kind of took off. It was off the charts, amazing seeing not only people in the audience, but afterwards. I remember, like, backstage, Bruce coming over to us, and Bruce was like, wow, I cannot believe you guys just did that. And not only did it, but pulled it off, and it sounded incredible. So, hearing that from Bruce and guys like Eric and, all the other musicians backstage who were, and you even watched the video, there's, guys off stage watching. You could see Bruce is actually in the audience. You could see him if you know where to look. Everyone's watching. All of, Ace's band is there, and everyone's like, wow, we can't believe we're watching The Elder right now, and these guys are not fucking it up.
Yeah. Well, the book's like the performance as well. It builds steadily, throughout. It follows a nice trajectory. It doesn't feel jagged, and it doesn't feel predictable either. So how's the response been to it? I mean, has it given you the artistic validation that you were hoping by reaching into this kind of area?
The response has been way more than I could have ever hoped for. So again, my biggest thing was, how the hell am I going to get people to read this? This is, The Elder is an album people don't really care about, or if they do care about, are they going to read almost a 350-page novel on the boy? So it was something where I didn't know what I was going to do. So that's why I wanted to make sure that I did the audiobook. So approaching the audiobook, I wanted to make sure that Kiss fans who are not readers, and trust me, I got so many responses about the audiobook saying, thank you so much for doing this, because I would have never been able to read this. I'm not a reader. I don't read books. I haven't read a book since middle school, blah, blah, blah. And the audiobook really translated well. I got this amazing voice actor to do this over-the-top James Earl Jones, deep, crazy voice. And I was lucky enough to get Ancient Door. I'm not sure if you know who Ancient Door is, but Ancient Door are these incredible musicians that redid the whole Elder.
Yep, got that CD over here.
It's phenomenal. If anyone doesn't know it, check out Ancient Door. It's on Spotify. Check it out anywhere you can find them. They redid the whole Elder and then some. They added even more orchestration to it. So they were kind enough to let me utilize little clips throughout the audiobook that kind of tell you where you are in the story. As you're listening to this audiobook being read, there might be a little clip of the guitar strum in Just a Boy, just to tell you where you are, or something in Dark Light. You might hear the little Jaws dun 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 dun, that little guitar, Jaws type thing coming up to tell you where you are in the story. So a lot of the Kiss fans really were thankful that I got the audiobook done. And I wanted to make sure that I did release it at the same time, so they did have that option. But the response has been overwhelming. Obviously, people are loving what you said, Julian, the Kiss Easter eggs and all the little Kiss lore, Kiss history. Vincentius was a big hit, I think, with a lot of people. And I knew going in that he was going to be who he was in the book. So Kiss fans, I think, who did read it, loved it, really appreciated the work that I put into it. And I'm just dying for more Kiss fans to read it, go listen to the audiobook. I want people to dive into this. If you ever wanted to know what the Elder could have been, should have been, can still be, check out. I want you to dive into the audiobook or dive into the book. And you don't have to be a big reader or if you tell me the truth, really, I tried to make it a pretty easy read. It's not a very complicated story or in-depth description. Like I said, reading Tolkien and Lord of the Rings over the years it's a hard read. I don't know if you've ever read Lord of the Rings, but it's not an easy read. Even things like Game of Thrones, not an easy read. Those writers are incredible, way above what I could do, but almost to their own detriment. They almost put too much stuff in that the read, you have to be a brain surgeon to understand what the hell is going on. Me, all you have to be is a Kiss fan.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it's an easy or difficult because, I've been reading Lord of the Rings since I was 5 years old. So I just found an enjoyable read. I like to read books. I'll read some pretty deep and heavy stuff that you've just kind of described. But I also want to read stuff that I really don't have to put a lot of intellectual energy into other than my face smiling, and just reading for pleasure. And I don't think it's entirely fair to kind of look at an audiobook as something negative. We were listening to audio cassettes of books in the 70s. So it's always been a convenient, as a child, it was very convenient. And then later to be able to take these books, in your Walkman back in the days initially. Now there's Audible and other platforms for the audiobook. It's just as valid as listening to an album when you're in the gym, when you're out for a walk, or maybe you just want to sit on your sofa and have your coffee and put on some headphones and listen. It's an equally valid way of consuming a story without it being seen as a cop-out. And I love that you got Christopher and the Ancient Door guys to let you use that material because it's absolutely impeccable. I now feel I have to go check out your audiobook because you sold me. Now it sounds like that was a great ad, Joey. Good job.
There's a lot of extras. If anyone's who read the book, there are extras with the Ancient Door soundtrack, if you will. And there's even some more soundtracks like hawks and falcons and lightning and storms. And, there's some soundtrack and special effects stuff just sprinkled in enough, not to take you out of the story, but hopefully to keep you in the story. So like you said, Julian, I agree. I love audiobooks. Listen, this is a podcast. We all love podcasts. I do a podcast. There's so many podcasts out there. Most of the time on my long drives or my commutes or my plane rides or any kind of travel that I do, I'm listening to talk. I'm listening to podcasts. I'm listening to audiobooks. I'm listening to stuff like that. So I agree. In this world, especially in the podcast generation, this audiobook is very easily consumed. The chapters are broken up pretty easily. It's not overly in-depth. It's a pretty fast, considering it's an audiobook. It's like listening to 7 or 8 episodes of your favorite podcast. That's what it would take you.
Yeah. So the ending, I've not gone into specifics throughout because I really want people to enjoy it for themselves. And I think your enthusiasm comes across in spades. But it's a little bit open-ended at the end. As a creator, do you think that you've got another one of these in your future? Do you think that way? Are you kind of mapping out your life as a creator, or are you someone who just goes with the flow, and if something happens tomorrow, then you're on it?
Listen, I definitely did that on purpose. I'm a fantasy, like I said, a fantasy reader. There's never, every series that I've ever read, it's never just one book. It's always 3, 5, sometimes 10 books. So, I'm all about telling an ongoing story. If, the response has been overwhelming, the sales have been phenomenal. I would love to do another one. I would love to tell more about this story. And there's plenty more to tell. I think, like you said, the story, there's a hero in every generation. So, there's going to be another one for the next generation, or maybe the generation before. Maybe there's a backstory to tell. Maybe there's a little bit of both. Maybe there's a little Godfather 2 in the next book where, you're telling a little backstory and you're telling the current story. So I got a little map of what that could be. Right after this, I kind of obviously still had all my juices flowing. I gave a little 2-page summary of what the next book could be. Haven't started on that yet. Moved on to another book or so before I start that next one. I have a fun one coming out, I think, about halfway through right now. Just kind of started on the cover work. I should hopefully be ready for the mid-fall, maybe hopefully Halloween time, the latest. I think Kiss fans will really, really love this one. It's more of a Julian Gill type book. It's a history type book. It's an in-depth look at certain things in that Kiss world that really maybe haven't been touched. Maybe they've been touched, but not all together in one book like I'm doing it. And then there's another thing that my fantasy, my dream would be to obtain. There's a license that I'm trying to possibly get a hold of, obtain the rights for if I'm able to, which it's a super long shot. Just because who the hell even knows? Anyway, there's a lot of red tape to go around, but there's something else that I would really love to do in this Kiss world that I think us Kiss fans would want to know and want to see another one of, if that makes sense. So we'll see if I can get something done, but I have that whole thing mapped out. And I'll tell you, Julian, I don't know if it's okay with you or not, but there's a character in this new book that if I can possibly obtain some licensing and stuff like that, that maybe is based on someone I know with a J in his name and an Ilian at the end.
No, never any problem. I want to know what happened, because the mythology around the continuation of the Elder does exist with the War of the Gods.
Yeah,
of the what if. So I would love to see another because it's just been so darn entertaining. Let's wrap with what you're up to at the moment. Podcast Rock City, you guys go from strength to strength on a weekly basis. You guys are reliable, you're fun, you're entertaining, and you, of course, number one.
Yeah, we're live every Sunday night. Podcast Rock City, check us out. We're live on YouTube, live on Facebook. Check us out, our Facebook page, Podcast Rock City. Again, we're fun. We are lighthearted. We are positive. We're just having a good time, much like the KissFAQ. Just guys talking about Kiss, loving Kiss, complaining when we don't like something, and praising something when we do like something. Joking around. Are we the number one Kiss podcast? Who the hell cares? We're all number one. We're all great. It's a fun game I play every week that we call ourselves number one because it pisses some people off, and who gives a shit if it does? It's just ridiculous. We're all goofy Kiss fans at heart. We're having fun. We're Kiss podcasts. If you take yourself too seriously, you are in the wrong business. Julian, you're having fun. You guys do such great work, and there's so many fun shows out there. Anyone that takes themselves too seriously, God, please lighten up. It's Kiss. We're having a good time. When she says stop, baby, go, go, go. How can you take that seriously?
Absolutely. And since you were performing with various members of Kiss, I guess now that I've podcasted with Sonny, Hollywood, Pooney, Joe Polo, and you, I had better find an excuse to invite Lee on a show at some point so that I can collect my set of Podcast Rock City participants. I think that's the only way I'm ever going to have a complete set of podcast people on this show. Joey, thanks so much for joining me. Everyone, Order of the Rose, in print, Amazon, and of course on, what's your audio platform? Is that Audible?
Yep, it's on Audible. Again, it's on iTunes, Audible. Check it out. Check out Order of the Rose or type in Joey Cassata on Amazon. You'll see all my books, everything we talked about. I still have my autobiography up there. Julian was a big help getting that off the ground. That was my very first book that I did, so I had no idea what the hell I was doing, and I reached out to Julian, and he gave me some great advice. So check out all that stuff. It's all on Amazon, one-stop shopping. Enjoy it, and please tell me if you liked Order of the Rose. Leave me a review, and if I can get enough good feedback, I'd love to do another one.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time, Joey.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final. There are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the message board and discuss the topics we've broadcast today. Don't forget to hit subscribe wherever you've listened to this show, and a like would very much be appreciated. We hope you'll join us again, but until then, remember, life's a radio. Turn it up to 10.